Okay, so we've looked at file I/O using text files. We can write text files and read text files. We've looked at using the CSV module, so we can write and read from a comma separated variable file, which is compatible with spreadsheet type programs like Excel. But what happens if we just want to save some data from our program? We don't want it in a fancy text file. I just need to save the data that my program's been using, whatever that data is, dump it to a file. I don't need to open that file outside of Python and have a look at it. I'm not interested in how it's stored. It doesn't need to be in text. And then next time I run the program, I want to read that data back in. So creating myself persistent storage. So you might think of running a program where students are having a go at doing something. They put their name in, they get a score. Their score is written to some database, effectively some list. That list is written out, and then next time you run the program, the whole list is read back in. All the student scores are there for you to see, manipulate, know whether they've got a better score than last time. And then at the end of the program, it just overwrites it and saves it back out again. So we're going to have a look at how we do that. And again, fortunately, somebody's thought of this for us, and they've created a module called Pickle. So we're going to use Pickle. So the concept of pickle is it's like pickling it in a jam jar. I'll go back to the good old jam jar analogy again, in that we just take our data and we pickle it. We put it into a pickling compound and it just stays there. And when we want it, we just pull it out of the pickling jar again and we've got our data back. So it's really, really easy to use. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set up some basic data. I'm just going to do a string with my name in. I'm going to call this data1. I'm going to do data2. This is just going to be a simple list with 1, 2 and 3 in. And I'm going to do data3 just being a number. So it doesn't matter, I've just got different types of data there. And this pickle will store any kinds of data that we want to think of anyway. So what do we want to do now? Well, again, we've got to open the file. So there is a open command, just like we had before. And we name our file that we want to open. So I'm going to call it Pickle DB. I'm going to kind of call it a database. So I'm going to call it a Pickle DB. And the extension doesn't matter because it's not going to be a recognized extension. So I'm just going to call it a PK1 file. And I want to write to this file, and notice now I'm going to use B. B stands for binary because I'm not writing text to this file, I'm writing in what we call the binary mode. Obviously, again, when we open the file, what does this give us? It gives us our file handle, so I'll call it our output file. Is a return from opening the file. So I'll open it again. If the file doesn't exist, it'll create it. If the file already exists, this will override the file for writing, so everything else that's in there will be lost. And if I want to write data to the file, how do I do it? It is absolutely dead easy. I just call pickle and I'm dumping it into the jar, so pickle.dump. What do I want to send into the file? Well, I'm going to send data1, which is my string. And which file, because obviously I could be handling lots of files, so obviously I've got the file handle being my output file. Okay, so basically pickle.dump, the data I want to write, which in this first case is a string, and the output file is the file handle that we got when we open the file. So I've kind of put that into the pickling jar, and the great thing about this is maybe that's all you want to put in which case you stop at that stage. But what we're going to do now is we're going to write all our 3 items out to the file. If I could do a control copy. There we go. So I'm going to write out data2, which is a list, and data3, which you'll notice it's actually a number. It's a number 100. It's not the text 100. So it's actually the number 100. So I'm going to write that stuff out to the file, and then what do I need to do? I need to obviously close my file. So I use the output handle. So output file dot close. Okay, so let's run our program and see what happens. Now notice our program doesn't print anything, so we won't actually see anything at the command line. Sorry, one thing I should have just said, if I just do a file save as, you can see where this is being saved. Saved to a folder called file.io, it's called there, called file. So I'm just going to save it there. And if we look at that place, here's a file, we've just written it now. So let's run the program. There's a window. Oh, WB is not defined right binary app, so that should have been as a text field in there rather than just WB. Okay, so our program runs. Has it done anything? Well, it didn't print anything. Well, we didn't ask it to print anything. But if we go back into the folder, you can see now it's created this file called pickle db.pk1. Which obviously if we try and open, Windows won't know. And we can prove that by clicking on it, and obviously Windows is looking to see what a PK1 extension is. It doesn't recognise it. It's suggesting Notepad, because I've actually opened it in Notepad before, which is obviously just giving me the ASCII value. So yeah, we can see the string Duncan in there, but goodness knows where the 1, 2 and 3 is. So that didn't work very well. Opening HexEdit, which if you've come across before is a free hex editor, shows you the raw numbers that are stored in here. So yeah, we've got the string, we've got the list 1, 2 and 3 stored in here. What's quite interesting, I can see, there you go, I can see a 1 and a 2 and a 3, so those might be the raw numbers that are part of my list 1, 2 and 3. And the number 100, if I knew what 100 was in hex, might be in here somewhere. But you can see it's difficult, but like we said, the whole point is you don't examine this file to see what the data is. You know, this is not an output for us to look at as people with Notepad or looking at the binary values. But you can see it's created this pickle.db file. Pickle.db file .pk1, because that was the extension I put on it. Okay, so that's written the file. And what we need to do now is understanding that if our program has come to some point and we've wanted to save data 1, data 2 and data 3 with these bits of information in, we've written them to this pickle file and that's it, we've got the file. So the next thing to think about obviously is what do we do to get that information back out. Okay, so let's get this bit commented out because I don't want this to work at the moment. Obviously in the real program we'd have all this wrapped up in some kind of function. Okay, so I've commented all that out. So if I want to open a file for reading the information in, then I do exactly the same command as I've got there. So I'm going to copy that command up here. It's called pickledb.1, but obviously this time I'm not writing to it, I'm reading from it in binary. So I've got the RB option there, reading from it. And just like you'd expect, we had a pickle.dump. To read the data back out of the pickle file, we have pickle.load. And obviously in this case all we need to say is what our file is we're reading from, which is our output. I shouldn't call it output file now, should I? Let's rename our file handle input file. That's where we're actually reading from. So input file is our handle. I'll spell pickle right. So obviously when we load this, it's going to pull something out of the pickling jar. So we're going to pull what it's written into the pickling jar into a variable called data1. Okay, so the first thing out will go into data1. Let's do a copy of that. Oh, made a bit of a mess there. And we'll read again from the file into data 2, and we'll read from the file into data 3. Then we'll close our file with the close method. we've read our data out now, so we'll just print data 1 and print data 2 and 3. So remember, we wrote data 1 in, we wrote Duncan, then the list, and then 100. We're now reading it back out. Let's run our code. And here we go, we got the string Duncan, the list 1, 2, 3, and the number 100. So it's the order that we put it in. So it's not quite like a jam jar in that you'd think you'd put Duncan in and then list would go on the top and 100 would go on the very top, and when you open it you pull it out in reverse order. The order we put it in, we get it back out in that same order, so it kind of makes logical sense. But you can see what we've managed to do here then is preserve this data that we've written in, and we've not had to do anything fancy. We've not had to worry about new lines. I've not had to worry about what kind of data it is, and clearly within the context of the program you know that for a particular pickled file you're going to write out several kinds of data, and they are lists, strings, numbers, whatever they are that you want, and then you make sure when you open the file and you read it back in, you read them back into appropriate variables for that content, so it makes sense. And to be honest, this is by far the easiest way to run a program. Just write stuff out to a file, save it, next time you run the program pull all that back in. It's a known data structure and you've got known data variables. So Pickle's a really easy module to use, and probably the one that you're going to make the most use of, providing you don't need it as a text file that you can read, because as we've seen, the Pickle file is very difficult to interpret. Okay, hopefully that made sense. Good luck and enjoy using Pickle. Bye.